Welcome, everybody. Every year, and I've been speaking at every 33rd degree conference and now at Devoxx Poland since the very beginning. Every year, Grzegorz gives me bigger and bigger room, and this is the first time people didn't overflow it, but that would be like triple the size of the last time. Thanks for being here. Today, I won't be talking about microservices as other speakers do. I mean, this is mostly, I think, in Devoxx, the microservices conference, which is fine, right? I'll be talking about something more, I believe, universal and applicable ideally for you for many years. This is about the story which I had and I've been living for last more than 8 years as co-founder and CEO of Spartes, of being an average mortal developer with some dreams, with some passions, with some skills maybe other developers don't have, who transitioned and has been doing it for a couple of years from a regular developer positions to manager and then to CEO. So quickly about me, probably some of you may know me. My professional life has been around 4 companies, initial Lufthansa, then Intel, and for last 8.5 years, I'm really connected closely to Atlassian and Spartes. I'm the guy who you may blame for a lot of things you saw in Jira for last several years. I was a dev manager of Jira. And Jira is like the product I think I put a lot of my effort into. So Spartes is a company based in Gdańsk, and this is like nowadays 90 people, more or less. And I co-founded this company from like 0. We grew to 90 people, like with the revenue of like 8-digit revenue. So it's not a toy anymore, and I learned a lot doing it. And here I am to share it. And you may ask why I'm sharing this information with you. This may be, you know, my competitive advantage or Spartes' competitive advantage. The fact is that at the University of Technology I graduated from in Gdańsk, we were not taught many super important things. So we were taught about graphs, languages, computer languages, algorithms, data structures, complexity, artificial intelligence, and so on. But I mean, most of this stuff turned out to be not very useful in my professional life. I remember like I used really high math once, solving some complicated math on the ellipsoid to calculate reverse projections for GIS systems. Well, what university didn't teach us is the stuff which I find super important, which is collaboration with customers inside the team, doing code reviews, continuous integration, doing support, really iteratively working on the system, deploying stuff, and so on. So the problem I found at the Polish universities in general is that they don't cooperate well with the business, with one exception. I had a great tutor, Dr. Andrzej Dyka, who about 17 years ago taught me a course called Managing Computer Company. At that time I was a student, I didn't even think about having my own company, and after 17 years I still owe this guy, I think most of the stuff he told me is universal. And I think that it's my time to pay you back. I deserve this guy so much, and I would like to teach new generations of people who may be one day leaders or CEOs. By the way, who is a leader or CEO here? Who would like to be? And what are the rest doing? So let me pay back my debt today. And obviously, I mean, this presentation contains some product placement, so this is another reason. So let me first start with the rule number 0, and I will have 10 of them plus 0, so 11. Obviously, we count from 0. So Andrzej Dyka, the guy who ran Crosscom, the company who was almost winning with Cisco in 90s, so multi-billion-dollar company. He was a founder and CEO of this company. Told me once, taught me that really bosses hate engineers bringing them problems. They want engineers to bring them solutions. And this is like, if you think about it better, like more focused, it's not about covering problems or, you know, pricing everything your boss will say. Businesses have enough problems, and they don't need engineers to tell them that it sucks, it's a problem, it's risky. They want engineers to help them win. And really, business people focus on opportunities, not on the problems. They play to the strengths and not to the weaknesses. And sure, we are, as engineers, the guys concentrate why something may break or will break. The fact is, however, that if we think only about it, as Andy Hand in Pragmatic Think and Learning, the book, the great book I recommend, summarized nicely, is that negative thinking destroys your brain. Remember about it whenever most of your energy is spent on whining, complaining, and finding glass half empty, and thinking that this sucks or because something. And this is also very visible in engineers who always talk to each other or talk to business people when a business person or product manager, owner, or a colleague comes and, wow, I have a great idea, we could do this, this, this. And then the engineer listens to it and says, well, it's an awesome idea, but, and then it's a list of what can go wrong, so your idea is really worth nothing, and you are a zero. Whereas really, what engineers are expected to do is to concentrate what to do to make this idea successful. So, oh, your idea is great, and we should think about this, and additionally, we could this, and that, if we like deal with this risk, or if we think about adoption and so on. So again, it's thinking about I would say concentrating on about decremental destroying of someone else's idea, whereas and approach, blah blah blah, and we can do something. Is about the focus of incremental building something, and this is what bosses love. Another thing is that negative thinking destroys not only you and your brain, and really, I mean, biologists and doctors on the studying neural system and the brain prove it. Negative thinking destroys your synaptic connections between neurons, but also you destroy your colleagues around you by negative thinking. It's not about being always, smiling and falsely positive regardless of the problem. But also it's about remembering that the problems are, they exist, but this is not the core essence of our existence. Opportunities and solutions are. And when you are, as a guy, as a fly, flies see shit everywhere. They love shit, right? And just imagine, at the same time, yes, sure, there is shit somewhere. But you can think also about things which are on the, say, meadow. There are flowers on the meadow too, not just shit. And you can be a bee who concentrates on the flower, and people love to work with bees. However, people hate to work with flies. And actually, I stole this kind of metaphor from Szymon Kudła, a very interesting and highly renowned trainer and coach and speaker in Poland, who basically told me, and proving with some really statistical analysis, that negative, whining, and seeing always shit people are #1 reason of frustration of people who want to change the world, who are positive, who are energetic, and really want to do their best. So think about it. Now my rules, really. My lessons not from Andrzej, Adyka, but from myself. First thing I painfully learned is so-called the entrepreneur dilemma. So Randy Zuckerberg, a sister of Mark Zuckerberg, I believe you know, a few years ago coined this term, entrepreneur dilemma. So she's an entrepreneur herself, and she noticed that if we try to define 5 most important things in one's life, which is friendship or friends, building a great company or a business, spending time with the family, so really your family relations, kids, wife, parents, and so on, basically fitness or staying healthy, sane, and so on. So I would say alive, reasonably, not weighing 300 pounds or 400 pounds and barely moving on the wheelchair. And finally, getting sleep, really, which is somewhat related, but equally important. Entrepreneurs, so people who really start companies and run them, have to pick 3 out of these 5. And they have to sacrifice other 2. Some very skilled and successful entrepreneurs say they have to pick 2 and sacrifice the remaining 3. And think about it, because I found it painfully true. That whenever if you decide to go into your business or to lead some big effort in some bigger organization, It's really about it. And if your partners, if your co-founders have different opinions about it, and for example, you pick building a great company as one of the three, and they don't, it's the recipe for disaster. They will quickly separate. There is nothing more frustrating as a business partner or co-founder who works on his fitness and spends time drinking beer with colleagues and family, whereas you build the company, you stay long nights, because 8 hours a day is not enough, believe me. So how to do a company or a business for 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, and still have friends, family, kids, wife, and so on? I was cheating, personally. So I was using the old scheduling algorithm, which means I was changing my focus zone. So every year or quarter, I had different focus areas, I would say. I was picking different three. Always remembering about building great company all the time. It was always 100%. But I must admit, I don't remember my younger daughter for the first year. I don't remember her. I was building the company. I don't remember like meeting friends for a year or two. I do have friends in the company. Well, but my old friends, someone's relationship died. I didn't want to take a risk and go to below some threshold with my family. So I still have a loving, beautiful wife supporting me and my kids, right? They know their daddy. But you have to remember about it, it's not easy. So this is number one rule. Rule number two. We always been talking about that the company does something and does X and Y. But in fact, I learned that equally or even more important is what the company doesn't do. It's equally defining the company, not just what they do, but what they don't do. If you think about it for a moment, it's basically about the focus. Focus changes everything. So if you focus on something, it does mean you are not focused on something else. It just doesn't work. So if you look at Atlassian, why they are so successful, a multi-billion-dollar company right now, publicly traded as of December last year. They never decided to negotiate price with customers. It was fixed. They didn't do any customizations, despite big customers were willing to pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars for some specific feature for, say, a big organization. They were treating Mr. Kowalski and IBM or NASA in the same way. Just drop that, you can vote for a feature, we will just evaluate how much impact it has on all customers. It doesn't have any professional services, so Atlassian won't come and install for you Jira or won't teach you how to use Jira for your company. They could focus on building the product only, so about the product which is reusable and useful for everyone. And that was how Jira or Confluence or Bamboo was born, or Bitbucket. If you think about it a little while, IKEA is very similar. IKEA is so successful because they decided not to, for example, deal with transportation of the furniture, assembling of the furniture for you. They just offer cheap, easy, nice furniture, and it's up to you to organize it. They do have network of partners who can assemble a kitchen for you or transport for you a big wardrobe, but it's not an IKEA business. They focused on building and designing and building in a cheap way furniture. Twitter doesn't support big messages. Guys, 21st century, they could do 300 characters easily. It's not about the impossibility, it's about their core mission to be a #1 company for short messages which make you and us think how to be brief and put it in 140 characters. It's not about technical problem. And they maybe are losing someone, but they are excelling so that they have 100 million of users. So in Poland, we have a lot of companies which are somewhat called in this way. So PPAG, which is like in Polish, Przedsiębiorstwo Przemysłowo-Handlowo-Usługowe, Produkcyjno-Handlowo-Usługowe, which is like the enterprise responsible for production, trade, and services. Some name, like Kowalski, Exim, which is export-import. So they do everything. They manufacture, they trade, they provide services, they do export and import. And in fact, most of these companies are just average, mediocre companies. They didn't focus on anything. And they try to define themselves as doing everything. If you look at the time of the CEO or the founders, actually time is the only resource which is really invaluable because we have only one life to live. is really the most limited resource. And my partner often says, Wojtek, thinks about every hour you have as like worth $1,000. And think whenever you are thinking about anything, talking to anyone, spending your energy on something, it's the loss for the company like $1,000. And it really makes change your thoughts and habits usually. And also, you have to realize that everything you do and everything you own introduces some tax. So if you have like employees in the company or products or services, computers and so on, everything is some kind of tax which incrementally builds some debt you have to deal with. And unless you always reduce the tax, which means getting rid of some stuff from your head, getting rid of some maybe services from the company and outsourcing them or completely eradicating, sooner or later the taxes will be close to 100% and you won't be moving. Examples from our life, we had 3 products. All of them they had customers, big and small. They were bringing money, maybe not 8 digits, but 5, 6 digits per year. But still, they were not something we believed Spartans may thrive on in 2015 or 20 because they were quite old. And we decided to kill them at some moment, all of them, really. And I can tell you, we always said, well, it brings us a few $1,000s per month, one up, for example. Why to kill it? A few $1,000s per month is a nice income for a small startup. At that time, we were like 15 or 20 people. And in fact, I mean, there is no free lunch. Any product you have and which is like a zombie, it doesn't grow quickly, is kind of a debt for you. It's a tax. It resides on the website. It occupies important place you normally could highlight for customers with the new, more important product, more successful potentially. You have to think about it during conferences. You have to think about it when you prepare marketing collaterals. You have to answer support questions or maybe someone is really asking you tons of pre-sales questions only to ultimately buy a $10 license. And you spend like God knows how much time dealing with the pre-sales stuff. And whenever we killed one of any of our products, we never regretted killing it. We always regretted killing it too late, really. So removing the tax too late. And Mr. Drucker, Peter Drucker, the guy famous from his Effective Manager book, I think, written in the 60s, he then briefly summarized it that if you want to concentrate or do something new, you have to stop doing something old. Life is not infinitely inflatable. You just cannot squeeze too much thing in your life. And that's very true. So how the focus looked in our case. So originally, at some moment, Spartans, when we were growing rapidly, we were doing 4 main businesses. So we were working closely with Atlassian, developing Jira, Bamboo, Fisheye, Crucible, and a few other things. Then we had our own consulting business where we had a lot of small and big customers where we were really implementing various tools for them and services. Training services about Agile, about Java, very profitable business, and our own products. And we said, well, it's too much for a company. It's about the focus. So we decided to concentrate just on 2. We killed very profitable, rewarding businesses completely. And additionally, we even split our organization into 2 separate companies. One is dealing with the products, one with the services for Atlassian. And except for me and my other business partner, no one in the company needs to think about both. People are 100% focused on one of them, full stop. There is one important thing about being focused, which is very tricky. If you are in the early days of your startup or the company, and you still try to find your niche, your business model, your customer segment, it's very risky to be focused for too long time, because then you may miss opportunity or signals from the market, which mean, well, you should pivot, you should do something else because just your assumptions don't work, versus being not enough persistent, because honestly, very few companies have a success overnight or over a few months. Most of the companies have to work for years to get to this point where the hockey curve happens and really they can take off. So if you give up too early, you basically can be on the good trajectory, but maybe too early, not in the hockey curve yet. If you give up too late, you may be missing the signal that the market doesn't need what you build. And this is, I think, the #1 problem in the whole lean startup movement, which, and if there is no such, if there hadn't been such a problem, all of us would have been millionaires by now, because all of us would exactly follow the recipe from lean startup. We would be running experiments and adjusting. In fact, this is a damn difficult, and it's always I would say, a bet. You never know it. It's a gut feel. It can be supported with data and the trends, but it's always about predicting the trends in the future. And predicting the future is very difficult. It's even more difficult than predicting the current time. So #3 rule, another one, which was shocking to me at some time, that some of us believe that idea is worth so much, whereas in fact, an idea alone is worth really nothing. And the execution is is worth everything. So to give you a story, I remember a candidate who applied for a job at Spartus, and the guy before the interview with me said, "Wojtek, I need you first to sign an NDA with me." And I said, "What? NDA with you?" "Yes, because I would like to share with you an awesome idea I have. And if you hear it, you will see it's so awesome. You will steal it from me, and then you are a millionaire, and I'm no one, right?" And I said, "Well, mate, I mean, your idea. Do you really believe that idea enough is like worth more than maybe 1%? It's just kidding." And in fact, when he decided to reveal the details without NDA, after all, and in fact, after 5 minutes, it turned out that the guy skipped a very important but neglected phase called market research. It turned out that there are 3 competing solutions already available, 1 open source free. Not the best way to start the conversation about the job is signing NDA. My point is that regardless of whether your initial idea is great or poor, it doesn't really matter, because really, some companies had very stupid ideas and they succeeded, and some companies had very beautiful ideas and they failed. Let me start from the failure, or maybe from success. Atlassian, 2002, they said, "Well, let's build another issue tracker." This was the time when everyone was using Mantis, Bugzilla, or these guys who had too much money, they were using ClearCase or ClearQuest together. And one would say, well, every startup builds either time tracker or issue tracker. Why would we build one more? And they said, "Well, we believe it's an awesome idea." And well, a few $1 billion later, they were right. So a stupid idea turned by a great execution, 12 years or 14 years, of work. It's where it led to Jira being #1 commercial issue tracker with no competition. It killed all the, I think, competitors. WhatsApp is an idea worth billions as well. Facebook bought it for 21 billion, I think. And Spartus had the same idea. Really, in 2009, we had a product called Meeting Room. I mean, even Visa bought it from us, and a few other companies. We've sucked at marketing. We made onboarding miserable. But it was pluggable, it had various nice features, very secure, based on Spring, OSGI, and so on. Awesome system. We completely undermarketed that. And an awesome idea worth 21 billion, something which we killed 3 years later, because it made maybe in total 4 or 5 digit revenue, whereas WhatsApp, the same idea executed nicely, 20 billion. SpaceX, they have Elon Musk, the founder, had this stupid idea that he had like $20 million initially for that, I believe. With $20 million, he can do something which neither US government or Russian government wasn't able to do with billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars, which is basically sending a rocket first to the moon and then to Mars. Everyone basically said, well, you must be crazy. And guess what? A couple of years later, they are sending a rocket, reusable rocket, to International Space Station every few weeks. Additionally, they are the first company in the world who land these rockets back, right, on the ground, and later on the drone ships. And when I looked at their schedule, they are now sending the rockets every 2-3 weeks, right? That's what I would originally call a bad idea. And the schedule for their already ordered launches is like a year long already, or 2 years long, and the company is worth billions. So as Alec Baldwin nicely summarized it, there are no bad ideas. all ideas are equally great, honestly, they don't matter. But even great ideas can go wrong. So what to do when the idea doesn't help alone, and what to do to avoid your ideas going horribly wrong? So the answer is invented by the God. Even the word was created by the iteration. So iterative execution is the way to build stuff. So the world was created in like 6 days, plus the 7th day was the celebration, so the meeting, like the party, got rested for a day. And every day, the world was incrementally built. So like human beings are on 6th day, but plants and animals were available earlier. And the soul, the ground, the earth was built like on the 2nd day. Stars were built earlier and so on. So it was an evolutionary architecture, I would say. I think, like some may think about stars as a microservices, but let's not go this way. So God himself knew that iteration is good. And also Eric Ries, another smart guy, he's not a god, also really re-emphasized it. Really telling us in his book how much iteration is important if you want to find your own niche, your own successful business model. And it's not about iterating only. It's about learning from the iteration and adjusting every time, about running experiments, about basically trying regardless of your starting point. And your starting point, you may think about your starting point as something where you have a very difficult function, which has global minimum, a global extremum, and some local extrema. And you start in a random place. And if you iterate, basically you can find your extremum somewhere. Ideally, a global one, if you are diligent enough. And good idea is basically what it does. It puts you closer to the solution earlier, so you may need a few iterations less. But still, if you suck at the execution, you may go in the wrong way on your function which you try to discover. An important thing in iteration is doing it cheaply. So whenever you iterate, and in the software, iteration means releasing and looking for feedback from the market, the release process cannot be the act of the agony. That, whoa, we work, now release, and we are wasted for another 2 months. This is like traditionally how the software release process look like releases every year or 2, and then 2 months of the celebration, and nothing happening, only when another release was coming, then everyone was working hard again. And in fact, the whole Scrum and Agile movement with weekly or bi-weekly or monthly iterations is about having this, forcing us to have a cheap iterations. And for rocket science even, so for SpaceX, cheap iterations meant reusable rockets, right? Elon Musk rediscovered that he has to have reusable rockets to have cheap iterations. Additionally, even to make it safer for them to iterate, they decided not to land rockets on the ground because they may kill someone in the vicinity. It's easier to, it's more difficult but safer to invest in landing on water. And it's easier for them to land, it's easier and cheaper for them if they crash something to avoid any kind of negative impact. So this is kind of thinking which leads us to cheap iteration. Number 4, automation, which is so loved by us engineers, introduced too early is unfortunately a waste. Let me give our story again at Spartus. So like 6 years ago, we had the first product we were selling, like the first add-on which was integrating with Jira. We had first customers interested in that, and we said, well, we already predicted we'll be selling hundreds of copies a day, and we at the time said we need to now invest in building our online shop. So we have to process credit cards, invoicing has to be automatic, because invoicing creating 100 invoices a day would basically mean like 1 or 2 people completely spending their whole time on writing invoices. And in Poland, obviously, invoices are the most important thing. I don't know how it's possible that in the US I can have a business card of the taxi driver who puts there just in the pencil $100 as the cost of the taking me from the airport to some place, and our fiscal authorities accept it, whereas here I cannot take a bill from their fiscal machine because it doesn't have NIP or tax number of my own company, but it has all the other details, including VAT and so on. So that's a digression. All in all, we were in this mindset that we have to automate the selling process, and at the time we had 2 sales per week, more or less. And guess what? We invested a few hundred, I think maybe 1,000 of man-hours in building the platform instead of improving the product. Whereas we could have invested almost 0 and maybe hire a student or maybe really do ourselves first 2 or 3 invoices per week. And only if we really see that the overhead is a problem, then to invest in the automation. I mean, additionally, we could have also used an out-of-the-box product available off the shelf, a system for like Amazon today for selling our stuff. And we didn't decide to do it because they charged 3% of our sales for processing credit cards, not 1.5, which we could achieve by building our own. It was like the most stupid thing we did, I think. I mean, obviously, like 3%, 1.5% doesn't matter. You want to have traction, first customers, first sales. And if it becomes hundreds and thousands of dollars every week, this difference of the margin or the charge amount they charge you, then it's worth investing. So the automation, basically, too early automation not only causes unnecessary costs, but also stops you from understanding the problem well enough. Because at the moment you automate it, you have to understand the process. This is what the process looks like for you at the moment you automating it, and then you basically hand it over to a machine to deal with it. So if your understanding isn't full, your automation will be suboptimal too. And you won't learn more because something in the back will be doing it. So it's really really dangerous to early automate something because you're basically cutting yourself off from full understanding. And also, as Peter Drucker again said, automating something useless or inefficient just will produce great efficiency automatically. And ultimately, this is a very important thing, very few processes you model initially will survive the contact with the battlefield, which means after several months, a year, 2 years, it turned out that your original assumptions were wrong. And all the effort you spent on the automation is wasted. So again, be aware of automating too early. Your colleague, younger brother, students are to the rescue. Maybe a mechanical Turk from Amazon. You can really ask them to maybe recognize images for you. You don't need to invest, say, $1 million initially just to improve the to make a very simplest sign-up process, because an idea could be to scan automatically ID, like Airbnb does. You can send them a photo or your ID, and they will automatically retract information from it. Sure, it's tempting because it's so awesome, it's so sexy to have such sign-up page, but think about it, hundreds and thousands of zlotys or dollars or hours spent on optical character recognition doesn't matter. It still won't prove the point of your business. It won't validate your business, just the sign-up page. So better invest in making your product more useful. And initially, when you have first maybe 100 people a day or a month, do it manually. Number 5, that was very tough for me because I always have considered myself as a perfectionist. But unfortunately, it looks like too much order means seeking your comfort zone. What it means, really. So let me start from what Mario Andretti said, I think like 20 years ago. Mario Andretti is an Italian-American, a very famous Formula 1 and car racer, basically. And he's the only guy who was winning all kinds of races, not only Formula 1, but also NASCAR, Daytona, Indy, for like 40 years. Just imagine a driver winning races for 40 years in a row, 4 decades. And he once said that really, if he as a driver seems to have everything under control, it means he's not driving fast enough. What does it mean, really? We as engineers are the guys who, by our nature, look for establishing and maintaining the order. By order, I mean clean code, making sure names are correct, coding styles, like diligently replacing spaces into tabs or vice versa, or reformatting code when our colleague passes over it to us. Any kind of refactoring and so on. We hate when our managers change priorities. We call them chaotic, we call them they are building technical debt and so on. In fact, this is all good, but at the same time we have to understand that it's about really feeling comfortable of where we are now, and not everyone in the world will be doing this, which means especially your competition in your business may decide to go something more crazy, more risky, faster, and basically make you out of the business if you at all costs will concentrate on just making sure that everything is under control. It was very well described by Ed Catmull, so the guy who built together with Steve Jobs Pixar, known from all the great movies, for example, where he really explained it in detail how this impacts engineers and the company. And really the answer is that this is somewhat similar to test coverage. It's useful, but if you go crazy about it, if you will be aiming at 95%, 98%, 99%, the value goes exponentially high, and the cost, of doing it, and the value is going exponentially quickly to zero. Like incremental is less and less valuable. So if you were isolated, that's fine, but your competitors watch you, and they don't necessarily will do what you do. And especially if you are a leader, as Atlassian is, competitors have nothing to lose. They are more eager to risk. And we have to always remind ourselves that it's not about just technical debt and being always in control. Sometimes we have to really do things which make us uncomfortable. So we have to drive uncomfortably fast. Another one makes a special sense in Poland. So the way how one ends, not begins, defines true professionalism, or the original version was from Leszek Miller, which is like the true man is known not by how he starts, but he ends. And by man, I mean male. Well, so let's leave any sexual connotations on side, and let's concentrate how it applies to software engineering. So, well, if we think about what we do as software engineers, we have a lot of interesting things at the beginning, like working on the greenfield projects, picking technologies, doing proof of concepts, various crazy plans, drawing diagrams, mock-ups, redesigning, re-architecting, rewriting, creating alpha versions, prototyping, so on. Everything is great here, really, it's awesome. But at the same time, there is a lot of more boring stuff, which especially those more experienced know about and are aware about, which is about maintaining brownfield projects, taking care about deployments, upgrades, migrations, rollbacks, roll forwards, user training, and so on. And let me paraphrase Agile Manifesto. Well, there is a value in the items on the left. Users and customers value the items on the right more. And also, those people who have been engineers for 20 years, 30 years, they finally understand it, that this is where value comes from. This is necessary, but without this, the value for customers and for your business is very limited. And when I was building a house, I had many various small contractor companies which were responsible for plumbing, like masonry, like ceiling and so on, floors. And I just remember like 45 or 35 companies, I think, at the peak moment. I remember just one guy who I recommend to everyone. This wasn't the guy who had the best, who was waving their hands and was the most communicative one. It wasn't the guy who was offering me the lowest or average prices. He was the guy who was always ready to accept that the project really starts only when it ends, which means the initial delivery, even at house, of the fixed assets, like bricks, is still subject to the maintenance. It's still subject to fixing some problems, is to improving, extending, and so on. And this is the guy who I consider a true professional guy. Rule number 7, or lesson number 7. I learned painfully that really the most important skill for engineers is communication. Why? Because engineering is working, it's not about working with computers. This is just a medium how we do it. It's about working with human beings to solve their real problems and to understand what people want from us, to understand true needs of customers, not just what they say, or even worse, what they specify in a Word document, requires a lot of soft skills, communication skills, empathy, and stuff like that. And also, nowadays, even in startup world, still software development is a teamwork. You can find very few individual people who can build alone something very meaningful. So all this stuff, all these skills you have to have really to be a successful engineer. It doesn't mean that technology is not important. Definitely, it's a must-have, but I would say it's a necessary condition, but it doesn't mean it's enough. Because under this iceberg, the communication skills lie, and we often forget about it. We are not taught it at the university. We are often shy away as, by default, introverts who prefer machines from building our communication skills muscle. But we have to really remember that even the best engineer who doesn't want to invest in his communication skills is, I would say, worth maybe 20% of what he would be otherwise worth. And communication skills for business people, and now I myself consider a business person, is super important. I can recommend to you a book from Dale Carnegie, the book written in 1936, so before the Second World War, and it still reads as it was written yesterday. An awesome book about not manipulating people, but really, I would say, an empathic approach to talking to people, to communicating with them, which makes you effective and them effective. So it's a win-win solution. One more thing about the communication. As engineers, we love to use these channels like emails, SMS, chat system, whatever, HipChat, Slack, it'd be, or even Wiki, like Confluence, my beloved one. But honestly, they all suck for one-on-one communication. And I often find ourselves abusing it. When I see people at the same desk, I mean, almost pair programming, and they chat and they talk to each other using online chat, it's something wrong, really. One-on-one communication, real communication, verbal communication, like physical conversation, is so much better because conversation conveys so much more than just words. It's about really reactions, it's about the mimics, it's about the pheromones you can feel or sense in the air. These are the true messages, this is the true reaction. If you just type something and then you see after a while that someone types back, you never know what they thought. If you see them, and if you see their reaction, if you feel them, if you can smell them, you see what they think in reality. That's so much better, really. And also, people often forget that blaming each other publicly is really the guarantee to have an enemy. It doesn't bring any good. So always the old saying is that criticize privately, praise publicly. And it's not about being false. It's about basically the basic rights that a person criticizes publicly. You will not gain anything other than a short-term satisfaction of the victory, really destroying someone, whereas what you exactly get is the long-lasting or eternal enemy. Your choice. Another lesson is that, unfortunately, half products, so products almost finished or almost solving some problem, are unfortunately worth far less than half. What it means? With software, everything is possible. Well, if I write something in Java or JavaScript, that's even better example, everything is possible there. You can have even a Linux system running inside JavaScript virtual machine in Chrome, right, or in Firefox. So everything is possible, but just think about the customer who doesn't know how to code, who doesn't know API of your program, who doesn't know how to compile it, who is not interested in knowing that. He pays you to have an out-of-the-box solution. It's a very different thing. You cannot assume that they take your half-baked product and will script it, will extend it by themselves, will recompile it, and so on. That's a wrong assumption. And I think that Apple won because they understood early that they have to provide full products which work from basically from the moment you unpack them. You don't need to wait 20 minutes for your MacBook Pro to boot for the first time. Contrary to, I remember, like Windows 7 machine I bought to my wife, which I had to wait for like an hour because it had something pre-installed, but basically it was then installing for an hour itself. It's just this kind of example. And then just imagine that you are buying an Android phone and it requires you to first compile and install firmware. If Android had gone this way, by now they would have been like gone. They would have zero market share. Unfortunately, they understood that even an open source system has to still be packaged and ready out of the box for users. So whenever you think about delivering something, releasing a product, try to solve the problem of a customer till the very end, so that they can turn the plug in your application, like create an account, ideally import the account from somewhere else because you don't want them to create accounts, and it just works out of the box. And then it's worth maybe 10 times more or 20 times more, 100 times more in comparison to a system which just requires some scripting or some extra training. Or ultimately, we were Polish guys for years. We were somewhat, poor nation. I remember being myself a student and then guy who was earning average money. I always was thinking, why the fuck I would pay so much money for X, whereas I could buy a cheaper version, 10 times cheaper maybe, and play with it by myself, compile it, finish, and so on. But really, if you, and hopefully you are now earning more to the European or international country average, I'm not talking about developing countries, but really, say, Western Europe or US average, you will see that it's so important to save your time that people just don't want to invest their time into playing with your application to make it work. They want your application to work immediately, not after 2 hours. Okay. The last but one lesson is that founders who match are really key. And founders are, by matching doesn't mean being identical like clones. It's more like in Marvel comics. It's about people who complement each other, who reinforce each other, who are good where others sucks. But still, they have the similar values, mission, and I would say ethics, business ethics. Otherwise, if they don't, that doesn't work. So matching doesn't mean identical. Matching means as different as possible, with different superpowers, ideally, but with similar values, so maybe all honest. If you are honest and your business partner thinks only about money and maybe cooking crack, your business won't go anywhere. So how an example could look like of people who have similar values and passions but different strengths. So one guy could be a pessimist, and this is very useful to have such guy who always will think about what can go wrong. But if you have only such guys, you are done. You won't move anywhere. You will just give up your business. If you have a person who is realist, it's also good because he will provide a really reality check for you and will bring order, peace. You may have an optimist for whom everything is easy and will really it will encourage you to try. It's super awesome to have such person. And finally, you may have an idealist on the team who is a person who really maybe somewhat like Steve Jobs, who were dreaming sometimes, but his dreams often came true. If he was pessimist or realist, I think we wouldn't have seen iPhone or iPad or even iTunes at all. Because just realists or pessimists would kill it before it started. So that's ideally, if you are thinking about founding your company, aim at someone, at partnering with someone, and I highly recommend you to have business partners, not doing it alone. 2, 3 people, 4 people, I think is the maximum. We started with 8, 4 survived. They're not at the graveyard. Basically, it didn't work. It didn't work. We had different kind of passions, different kind of values. 2, 3, 4 people, I think it works. And ideally, aim at people who are completely different than you. Ideally, they are not even developers. Maybe they are great at business, like sales. Maybe they are great at marketing. Maybe they are great at the domain you are trying to focus on. And the last rule for me, from the 10th, is that small and simple is easy. It's very easy to do something small, which is simple. But it's very difficult to build something big, which is still simple. And this is because dealing with the complexity is hard. And the bigger system is, the more complex it becomes. And one have to realize that you cannot build or create simplicity by adding stuff. You can achieve simplicity only by removing stuff. So removing rules, removing people from team, removing dependencies, removing connection channels. That's difficult because you always risk when you remove something that people stop communicating and when they should, or people become frustrated because you just ask them to leave some team. And that's very, very difficult. And physicists have some observations that generally natural organic systems, they lower their energy density by increasing the complexity, really. of their structure. So this is what natural systems do. They lower their density of the energy by increasing the complexity. And I find it amusingly similar to organizations. They lower, big behemoths, big corporations, lower their energy by increasing their complexity of the organization. And I don't know the answer, because it's difficult, honestly, this is a constant battle. If you don't do anything as a boss with your company, it will just become more and more complex, and the energy of your company will go lower and lower. By the way, a great less is more logo, which is for me a TIE fighter, but it's also a logo of one of the companies from Canada I worked with. So less is more sounds nice, but in practice it's very difficult to achieve. And I think Leonardo da Vinci nicely summarized it 500 years ago or something, that really simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. It's really, and sophistication is not about the complexity. It's about a very well thought out design, which is so simple that cannot be even simpler. So let me wrap up with the 11th rule, which is please treat all my lessons with some pinch of salt. I mean, context is everything here. These are lessons which I learned from my surrounding, from my business, from people around me. Applying them blindly is risky. Basically risky. You should avoid applying them blindly. Some of them may resonate in your situation, hopefully. Some maybe not. You must stay flexible. And to sum up, so I told you what I learned as a software engineer transitioning to CEO. But generally, let's take a look whether really a software engineer can be a good CEO. So as software engineers, we have a couple of unique advantages. We understand technology, and technology obviously is now changing the world. It's eating the world. People like Jobs, after even his death, Zuckerberg, Gates still, Elon Musk, Bezos, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, all of them not just really impact us, developers. They really are like celebrities. They influence, they motivate whole world. Like pop stars or great sport players. As developers, we have this great ecosystem where by default we share knowledge and insanely really collaborate. We are not afraid of losing our jobs, like the position, or we are not concerned with the job security, because the market is so demanding that even, like, it's insane to think that if I'm good, I won't find a job elsewhere. So we don't need to protect our position, but avoiding sharing information. We grow each other. We have attention to details. We are precise in setting the goals, measuring them, defining them, very important thing. And we also strive for simplicity, which is, as I said, very important. So by default, we don't want to sit on our laurels, rest on our laurels. We really instead, by default, try to always clean up our system, refactor, make it simpler, and so on. The same as we should with the organization. We are accustomed to work nowadays with the very quick cycles. So iteration for us, hopefully by now, is a natural thing. Year, 2 years long releases are gone. We are really working now in 1 2 week releases. Some really people with their several releases a day with the continuous deployment. We know how to fail fast. We are not afraid of failing, and by default, fail is part of our job. No one dies because of seeing red unit tests. It's a part of normal life cycle of the product to see red unit tests, fixing the code, and seeing green unit tests. And we inspire masses. So I think that it's not that bad, and we have a huge potential nowadays to be a CEO, or maybe even a leader, a manager in the company. Steve Jobs said that really people only who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. So I say we have all the tools, we have the perfect time, and we have various unique advantages in comparison to other professions that for us it should be relatively easier, it doesn't mean it's easy, easier for the others to really change the world, to step up, being as a leader, CEO maybe, to try to change the world, really following your dreams and passions. Ideally doing it incrementally, in iterations, like Linux, 1 line of code at a time. This is from Linux Foundation, which I wish you follow your dreams and passions. Thank you.